Kennedy Green, how are you?
Good afternoon, Bailey.
So, Scott, this is not the first time I've actually interviewed you, is it?
No, Bailey. I believe that it was in September 1998, only because you gave me that info yesterday.
Well, it's a long time. So you've been auctioning now for 21 years.
Yep. Doing the real estate auctions for that's over 21 years now.
And you started with cattle auctions, Scott?
I did, yes. So I started my career with Dalgetty's in the northwest, New South Wales, Walgett, and then worked my way into goods and chattels with Pickles and Fowles Auction Group, now Mannheim, and ended up at McGrath under John's wing.
We talked a lot of our young auctioneers about getting into charity or chattel auctions or do anything they can to actually learn how to auction. Do you think it's a better place to start than trying to do cold calling at a property auction?
Oh, absolutely. I believe that anyone that's had the opportunity to call volume numbers has got the great depth of knowledge and skill with volume and fast calling to develop their pattern and be able to transition into the real estate job pretty easily with those fundamental experiences.
Well, COVID has brought we often say it's about opportunity and not crisis, and it hit us all of a sudden where we all of a sudden weren't allowed to do face-to-face auctions. So McGrath, which I always say the kings of auctions, are the ones who really started the whole progression towards auctioning everything in the eastern suburbs many, many years ago. What work did you go through in terms of selecting your platform for online streaming?
Good question, Bailey. We were actually in the process of talking with a number of representatives from different platforms because we felt the need to better the service provision of our auctioneering business and also to take on where technology was leading us. So we'd already commenced a few conversations with those platforms, and it just happened to be that once COVID and indeed the restrictions that were placed on us, we undertook Auction Now as our selected platform because it fitted with our program and our processes, and it was one that we could easily roll out.
Contracts of sale, how are you dealing with that? Are you still dealing with it in the old way, or are you using the back end of Auction Now to actually assist you there?
Okay, so we certainly have the ability to use the back end and use DocuSign and signing on glass for exchange of contracts. We at McGrath as well, because we're involved with Realtair, they are also working on the execution of contracts via e-platforms for auction day. So we've trialled a few, and so we're not hard and fast on any particular mechanism at the moment, but we're sort of utilising a couple to see what our agents gravitate towards and what they find usable for their day-to-day practices.
So how have you found the online registration system, Scott?
Listen, it's been received and pretty well. One thing about the Auction Now platform is and indeed the staffing behind it, they're very keen and progressive to see that the training element or the educational piece of the platform is distributed regularly and updated. So if there are any questions around the registration process from an agent point of view or a functionality point of view or usability, for want of a better word, they're certainly available to step our agents and auctioneers for that matter through the process so that it is seamless. I mean, it's all an educational piece, and we're in a new environment the way we conduct business. So this is just a new tool, and when there's new tools, there's obviously education around rolling it out.
Is that education, because we've heard it spoken about before, that very strong education piece with Realtair, are they educating the people who use it on the auction process, and or are they educating them on how to use Auction Now?
How to use Auction Now.
Right.
The processes, I mean, you know, we're pretty au fait with auction process, albeit that we operate in a different environment, and there has to be some changing to some operational aspects of how we conduct and what we say at the right time to get the right result. But certainly Realtair and Auction Now are hard and focused around the educational and uplift of their platform to make sure that when you use it, you have an intimate knowledge of its functionality and capacity.
Tell me about bids. Like, I'm one of these auction junkies who love going and watching cattle auctions because those blokes are so energetic and they're going so fast. And I'm thinking, when are you going to take a breath, because you're going to die in a minute? And then you had the auctioneers who work in the property sense don't have to work so fast, but the managing bids on a live stream must be very different.
Yeah, indeed. Listen, it is a slower process and an exact process, because the transition of information from different parties, to me, is, instead of face-to-face or eyeballs, is via pressing the button in someone's lounge room to hit a screen, to then have that message delivered to me from the screen, and then me count the number. So there's a few more moving parts, but the process is still the same. It's just the mechanisms in between that make it a little bit slower.
So what is the relationship like between the auctioneer, the agent, and the bidder now?
Well, the relationship between the auctioneer and the agent is as strong as it has ever been, and perhaps even stronger, because with the platform and the functionality of it, auctioneer and agent are regularly speaking to make sure that bidders are registered, and that we are ready for auction day, and that we have received copies of the reserve letters uploaded to the platform. We're probably offering a lot more service to our agents to ensure that they are comfortable, but also know that their auctioneer is across the platform intimately and can help them on every step of the way.
In some ways, there's two questions that arise from that. Is one of the beauties of whether it be Auction Now or any of the other platforms is that you're almost cuddled through the compliance process now.
Have to be, yeah.
And the second point, which is we've been pumping it here fairly heavily at Leverage, that even if you're not going to become an auctioneer, because we've found about 1 out of every 10 persons who do an auctioneer's course here will ever be an auctioneer.
That's right.
But we find that the ones who come through here and do the auction course are better agents for auctioneers.
Yeah.
And so we've actually started to push people, saying, look, don't just think about this is about becoming a stand-up auctioneer. Really, this is about learning a skill which makes your saleability better.
Yeah, I think it's from your side of the fence. It's about being a well-rounded real estate practitioner, and well educated, and certainly you know, your ability to operate in agent or auctioneering capacity is fundamentally very good.
Tell me about the knocking down, because obviously there's a few places that auctioneers have some liabilities, often collusive practices. That's going to be pretty hard when they're not in a room together, so they're not going to get involved with that. But one of the big ones is dropping the hammer too early. How do you deal with that on an online site?
Well, I mean, you just have to do your level best to make sure that you have given everyone the ample opportunity to place their bids. Now, if I can take an example of mine from Saturday just gone, where some 26 registered parties were involved in the auction process. It came down to around 9 or 10 actively bidding, but at the end,
they say COVID's turned the buyers away.
I don't know what COVID is happening down at Bondi Beach, but it's certainly not one that keeps them away from the buying process or the auction process, that is. But I was quite obviously slow in my auctioneering delivery, but extremely careful and considerate of the bidders on the other side of the screen. So taking into consideration time delays or just the function of a buyer thinking about what their next move is going to be, and then having to press a button to ensure that bid comes through. I probably called it up no less than 5 times and was equally clear about what buyer held the bid, because that's another consideration of online, where you can identify a buyer by looking at them and pointing to them and clearly identifying them in the house or on the street. But when you're on the other side of the screen, you have to make sure that everyone is clear. And I used the term during the auction that, let me be clear, that the buyer is buyer 8 and it's 810,000 for want of a better number, and that's where we sit. So you've got to be slow, and you've got to be clear, and you've got to be concise before you exercise your right as auctioneer to bring the hammer down.
And so it sounds like it's really important for you to have that relationship with your agent who says, look, we've squeezed everything we've got.
Oh, absolutely. And our function is not to leave anything on the table either. So if it takes a little bit longer through this process to get the right result, and indeed have our vendors extremely satisfied with the job that we've done, then it takes a few extra minutes. It's not the be all and end all, but it gives our vendors confidence and peace of mind that we're taking every single minute to ensure that the right result is the right result.
Scott, do you think that the acceptance of what you call virtual auctions and the fact that we've had a real push because of COVID, do you think that'll spread further across the country and the state? Will there be more geographic areas now that are more comfortable with it because of the momentum that COVID's given? Or do you think it'll always just be a niche area?
Oh, listen, there is no doubt that our industry on a whole will change post-COVID. The way that we do business will change, no doubt. I think what has been evident through this process is the way that we've been able to adapt with technology and the utilisation of technology and platforms, and time for us in the short term is about making sure when we roll out of this environment of COVID that we are better equipped and faster and quicker and more technology savvy, and that we will be, like a faster operational industry. But that is not to say that the actual process of an on-site auction, I don't believe anything takes away from seeing, smelling, touching and a competitive environment with people down on the street, in the rooms or in the property, where emotion and the look of another buyer is competing against you, because buyers want something when it's taken away from them, and whether that's from another buyer or a sales situation, you can't really get the best sense of that online. But you can on the street or in the rooms or in the property. So when we roll out, of course, we will get back to normal, and real estate will still be an exciting Saturday sport for many. But the use of technology will only better equip us as an industry to do our business.
One of the things which seem to be coming out is vendors don't get the benefit of the energy and the pressure that comes around a live auction, where these live streaming auctions actually give purchasers the protection of speed, because the pressure can't be exerted upon them. And some purchasers have actually said to us, we feel like it's a fairer playing field dealing with a live auction where I don't have the pressure than standing in public.
Well, you know, that could well be the case. It could feel like a fairer playing field, but you know, we still are operating within instead of a 15-minute window, maybe a 25-30-minute window. We're not an eBay that you can take days to consider your position and bid accordingly. You know, we still have a job to do, and that job, because people are used to operating at auction at a certain time period, this online process may be a bit slower, but I don't believe it is any less enthusiastic around the pressure that can be applied for a buyer to perform.
We already have phone bidders and we already have the power to do that. Do you see the situation where there will be a certain number of bidders who decide that, yes, people could be on site, but there's others who just say, well, you know what, I'm going to stay in my home and bid from here, and allow all the others to go and sit over there, because I can sit here with my family and friends, and I can converse with my partner and everything else, rather than turning up to the live auction.
So when we come out of COVID and people have knowledge of the online auctioneering process, live streaming, and the ability to bid online, on the telephone, externally, remotely, whatever word you want to use. You'll have to remember, though, that when we are back to normal and say down on the street, that buyer on the end of the phone or online will probably not have the flexibility or comfort to sit down and take an extra 5 or 10 minutes to make a decision, okay? Because we as auctioneers will move back at speed, albeit you can have someone on the phone or online watching, but they are going to have to participate in the bidding process like those down on the street. So you're going to have to find that happy medium. And I don't think that the technology, as we roll out, will allow bidders to say, oh, well, we can just slow down the process and bid at home. We encourage bidders to be at the property. We encourage them to immerse themselves in the action and the enthusiasm of competition, and that's done better down on the street or in the property, as far as we're concerned. Now, if you choose an alternative place to bid, you will have to recognise that perhaps you will be the exception, not the norm.
I've got to say, when I coach people to do bidding, and I do bidding ourselves, we always tell people it's better to go to the site, stand in the middle, know who the players are, know who the snorers are, those people up the back who sit around trying to wait to the end. You don't get any control being away from it. You need to be in the centre of the scrum, not at the perimeters, and definitely not on the outside. One last question. We put our house on the market to get the best price we can. Do you think that through the COVID period, and it's very hard to tell because of finance and unemployment, but through the period, do you think the process has still achieved the goal of getting the best price, which is in the marketplace?
Well, if you got Scott Kennedy Green on the other end of the screen with the hammer, then probably yes, Bailey.
So, that point, Scott, thank you for your time, and I know you're on time. And I know
good, gentlemen.
So we'll let you go back to the cows and the sheep and everything else, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks very much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Good on you. Take care.
All the best.